You are listening to Revealing Real Estate Podcast, where we dive into getting over your fear of taking risk in real estate and making money while you sleep. I'm Nico Pedizano, your host and real estate guru with over 20 years of experience. It's time to get real. All right, we are going to have a wonderful show today with a wonderful guest. I want to welcome to the show the CEO and partner of Smart Real Estate Coach, a two-time 5,000 fastest growing company focusing on transforming the W-2 employees into creative financing real estate investors. With a passion for business building, he is also a partner in the original real estate market, Smart Finance, and natprocessing.com. He is a three-time Amazon best-selling author of Real Estate on Your Terms, New Rules of Real Estate Investing, and Sell with the Authority of Real Estate Investors. All the way from Rhode Island. Welcome Zachary Beach to the show. Zachary, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on. Hope you enjoyed that introduction of yourself.
Nick, thanks for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure already just speaking with you offline. And it was, people always make fun of my accent, which is always awesome when I'm speaking with people with amazing accents as well. Because that's the first time I've ever heard anybody pronounce Rhode Island that way. It was great to hear that come out. So
I don't realize I have an accent. Yeah, I got my Canadian accent a little bit mixed with the Italian in me, right? So sometimes it's gonna come out a little bit wrong, but I do my best. I try to give it all what I got.
Oh no, it's a pleasure, and it was fun hearing my introduction from our great friends of the North in Canada. So I'm just going to have you come around with me and do the introduction like that for everything else for me, because it sounds way better than when I say it.
No problem. How did I say it? What did I say there? Welcome, Zachary Beach, all the way from Rhode Island.
Hey, there you go.
How do you normally pronounce that?
Just Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. All right. So you're just right at the border of New York, between New York and Boston, I guess?
Yeah. Actually, so our market that I buy and sell real estate in is Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Specifically, we've ventured as far north as Vermont and New Hampshire as well. And then we're national in the United States, and we actually have some investors in Canada as well that either are investing in Canada or that are investing across the border into the United States as well. So many different aspects of the country that we invest in.
So a lot of the stuff that you coach on, based on Smart Real Estate Coach itself, is encouraging or educating people in different strategies in investing into the real estate market. How is the real estate market over there? And can you give me a little bit about your background and kind of what your coaching involves?
Yeah, absolutely. So just give guys some clarity about who you're listening to.
Yeah.
I was one of those. I was one of those kids that I always say I was a poor kid that grew up in a rich town. So a lot of my decision-making processes come from having a chip on my shoulder, whether that be good or bad. But, everything you'll hear from me is kind of from that lens. So when as I was getting older and I decided to go off to college, I just went to college because people told me I couldn't. It wasn't because I had a burning desire to go to college or study something specific. And the reason why that's important is because by the time I came out of college, I had zero idea of what I wanted to do. So I did what every great educated college person does, is they go become a bartender and completely use their degree. So I became a bartender. Yeah, bartender. Me and my wife talk about it a lot. She was also a bartender. And we always say, most countries make you go into the military before you get in the working force. I think that everybody should get involved in the industry and be a bartender or a waitress. You just see things completely different, especially the way you connect and communicate and treat people. Yeah. So that was an amazing experience. And so by the time I was reaching 24 years old, I was a little burnt out. I was bartending late at night, and then I was personal training early in the morning. And then as I was doing that, I continued to do more side hustles. I was involved in network marketing for a while, just trying to find my way through. And at one point in time, I just got so burnt out that I knew there had to be a better way. So I actually approached my father-in-law, who was involved in real estate investing for 30 plus years. He trained up there in Toronto area, I believe, with Tom Ferry for a while. And that's what, as he was as an agent, was a broker owner for 18 years. Nice. But he got crushed in 2008. He had 23 projects going on. and the market tanked on him. So the only way he could get back involved in real estate was through what we call creative financing, or it used to be called terms, right?
Yes.
So I knew he was revamping his business. So when I approached him, I said, hey, I don't know if I'm going to like real estate. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it, but it's going to be better than what I'm currently doing. So that's when I really started from the ground up. I mean, he literally handed me a list of expired listings. So a bunch of people that were on the market at one point in time, and for some reason it didn't sell, and handed me, it wasn't even a real script. It was just like, here's the information we need. And I just started making calls. And that was the beginning of my real estate journey. And it's took me about 6 months to get my first deal from there, and kind of burned the ships at that point in time. Kind of haven't looked back since.
So so you're a licensed broker, I guess, right now in the United States?
No, actually, I've never held my license.
You never held your license?
Never held my license. My partner, father-in-law, was a broker owner for 18 years. He actually let his license go. Same with my brother-in-law, who was a realtor for 8 years, who was my other business partner, also let his license go. Has its pros and cons, but the reason why they decided to let their license go is because there's some complexities when you're targeting and going and targeting properties and having to deal with the board and things like that. Just we didn't want to have any drama. So instead, they all let them go. And so we've been, investors now specifically for, I think it's like 12, 14 years now.
Yeah, I have a very similar story to that as well. I also dabble in real estate investing, fix and flips. I've done a couple of the bills myself, and I can understand those barriers being a licensed realtor, and then going out there and trying to canvas to find your own product, and soliciting sellers to want to sell you, and sometimes even at a discount. And there are what's called, we look at it from our perspective here in Toronto, it's wholesaling. I know I have a couple of friends that just specifically, that's all they do is wholesaling, and that's their main focus. So they'll tie them up, get them up on assignments, and then flip them over, and then try to make a commission, versus the similar standard formula as real estate agents, where you call us to get your house on the market, then sell it, and we make a commission from that aspect. And I think there's a lot of ethical issues in regards to that, so I can understand why they relinquish their license to want to just kind of focus in on that. So let's go back to your first deal. I want to talk about, how did it start within your first deal? How did you get creative? Because I'm sure, being a bartender, you're trying to save up money, to put down on a down payment. Was your first deal as your own primary resident? I think your tax laws are a little bit different on your primary resident than they are here in Toronto. Or was it just right into a fix and flip? Or was it something that you held for a little while and invested and got in renters?
Yeah, no, good question. So, and we can hit on both of these. So I actually bought my first primary resident through our creative methods. But my first deal was actually a property. I was prospecting, and I approached a seller. He was going through a divorce. He was the owner of the house, and the house didn't really have any equity in the property at the time. And he just wanted to be done with the property. He wanted to walk away. So one of the ways in which we buy real estate is known as buying a property subject to the existing loan. So when I approached that seller, our solution to that person's problem was, hey, what I can do for you is we'll close on it. I'll take ownership, but the debt will remain attached to your credit. But, oh, by the way, you don't have to worry about paying any realtor commissions. You don't have to worry about paying any closing costs. You don't have to worry about really doing anything at all. You just have to be able to walk away. So that was the first deal in which I did it. We actually structured on a subject to deal. Now, the way in which we primarily exit is rent to own. So if I looked at our portfolio, it's like 95% rent to own. And then we'll also hold some rentals as well. But all of them are purchased through creative financing. So whether subject to owner financing or vendor takebacks or on lease options. It's the only way in which we buy and have purchased that way, because we don't want to deal with banks. We don't want to personally sign and guarantee on debt, and we don't want to put down large down payments. Super risk averse way of buying real estate, but also you eliminate a lot of the traditional barriers to scaling your portfolio as well. So that's what we were primarily focused on. And it's an interesting story, because when I went ahead and acquired that property, it was actually probably one of the best deals for me, but also it was one of the most challenging deals for me as well. And that's because, and maybe you guys have it up in the Toronto area, but there's a lot of properties especially in Massachusetts, in the New England area, that were built very early on, and some of them that haven't been what we would call de-leaded. So there was still lead paint in the property. So this particular property was in a town, but that town had like a sub-town, is like the best way to put it. It was in Holden, Massachusetts, but part of Holden, Massachusetts was also known as Jefferson, Massachusetts. So they had two basically records of this property. One record stated that there was no knowledge of lead, and the other one stated that there was. Now, when we closed on it, we apparently saw the documents that said there was no knowledge of lead. Right. So when we closed on it, we went ahead and we sold the property rent to own. So it's really just a bridge to bring somebody from that can't qualify for a loan to becoming a homeowner. The rent to own program.
Yeah.
We ended up placing a tenant buyer in the house, and she ended up having younger kids. Now, not young enough, I believe, for her to go to this extreme, but she went ahead and started testing the property for lead. And of course, we ended up finding out later that there was knowledge. So it was a $30,000 lead job. So imagine this. This is the best part, right? So imagine this. So I'm brand new family business working with my in-laws. I'm like, all right, Chris is my father-in-law's name. Chris, hey, yeah, show me the ropes of real estate. Teach me how to buy and sell real estate. I'm going to bring real estate deals to this portfolio. The first deal I get, we get a $30,000 lead job. So for those that are listening, right, this was a moment in time where it was like, this could make or break my real estate career. I'm only 6 months into it. It's like, do I take this as great lesson learned? Let's evaluate and re-look at the paperwork of our agreements to protect us, or I'm like, oh, this doesn't work. Real estate is hard, and of course, I chose the initial way, but it was definitely a pivotal moment, and certainly, I learned a lot of lessons from that first original deal. It was the school of hard knocks. I promise you that.
So your financing on that deal, was it more of a conventional mortgage, or was there a vendor take back on that, or a seller take back?
Yeah, good question. So there was a traditional loan already on the property. There was already a mortgage in the original seller's name.
Yeah.
So we closed on it, title transferred to us. So now we're the owners, or
so you're assuming the mortgage.
Not assuming, we're buying it subject to the loan. So the reason why I'm saying not assuming is because that assumption would mean that we had to go qualify for that particular loan and personally guarantee that loan.
Right.
Instead, that loan is staying in the seller's name, so we're just buying it subject to the existing loan, meaning it's gonna remain in the exact place it was. The person that's guaranteeing that debt is gonna stay exactly the same. Just the transfer of ownership is gonna come to us.
You are paying the person who's selling you the property, and then he's paying his mortgage now. So he's still involved with that mortgagee.
The way in which it's structured, or the way the cash flows, is when we close on the property and we take ownership, we're the sellers. Yes, we're going to remain attached to the loan, but we're going to notify the bank as if we're the property managers. So we're going to say we're going to be paying the loans directly now. It's going to all come from us. But we're not notifying them that the title has transferred. It's just all we're doing is telling them that now somebody else is going to be taking care of that mortgage.
That's pretty creative. You don't see that too much around here in Toronto, so it's something new for my ears, and it's pretty creative. There are a lot of things what's called a VTB, where we ask the sellers, especially if they don't have any financing or any mortgages on their property, where they're able to provide loans on those properties as well. And those are some of the creative tactics that we use to kind of not use or get involved with the bank or conventional bank lending. Or even some B lending, where you're going to be paying, or to some privates as well, where you go directly to the seller and ask the sellers for the mortgage itself. And a lot of times, some sellers are willing to give you that, especially on the big development pieces. We find a lot on the big land deals where we're focused in on, where not many people have $30 million cash to put down, or banks that want to finance on vacant land.
Yeah.
So we ask the sellers to provide that type of mortgage on those particular properties. But that's a very pretty creative way of closing in on a transaction. So now you've taken over that first initial property from the
Mhm.
seller. You get lead. You have $30,000 in repairs.
Sure.
You
Yep.
you you now go and make those repairs. You do
Yep.
a rent to own program with the tenant, which is pretty creative as well because there's not a lot of rent to owns here in Toronto. It doesn't really exist. It's a real rarity where you find
Hmm.
somebody, and we ask the question, we get asked the question all the time from tenants, do you offer any rent to own programs? And I want to dabble in on how your rent to own program really
Sure.
works and the
Mhm.
process of it. So maybe you can kind of give some enlightenment of how that program worked. And secondly, I want to get into how did you now pull out the equity from that particular property to get into your secondary dwelling as well, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So why don't let's take it the distance, this property,
Sure.
because I think I'll answer some of those questions. And then my other comment would be, if there's not a lot going on in your area, that means it's obviously, it's a huge opportunity. And then two is, I would expect, just like it's kind of taken hold of the United States right now, and that is, creative financing wasn't popular when we started doing it 10 years ago, even though it's been around since the 1600s. But it's becoming more and more popular as interest rates continue to rise, and the buyers are continuing to be, smaller and smaller, and sellers still want to sell, so they have to
Right.
look for different ways. Wall Street Journal just had published an article within the last week or two talking about how seller financing is one of the major options that sellers are now looking at in order to now be able to exit out their properties. And Yahoo Finance published something similar along with Forbes as well. So it's coming. And now it's just like, how do you get in front of the wave? Shit, let me keep walking through this deal. So
Yeah,
this
that's awesome.
deal, the way in which we actually nationally trademarked, it's called the 3 payday system, is what we trademarked. And the way that works is, when we buy a property, so I bought this property subject to the existing loan. I now have ownership of it, which now allows me to go sell this property. All you need is controller ownership, and then you can go ahead and sell this property. So I'm going to sell it on rent to own now, which means title is going to still remain as me as the seller, but this buyer has basically a net lease and the option to purchase this property on or before a certain period of time. Now, in order to really secure that this is a buyer versus a seller, we're going to acquire a non-refundable deposit on the property. So that's typically anywhere from 3 to 10% up front, and sometimes up to 20% over time. That's coming directly to us. That is non-refundable if the buyer does not exercise their option to buy the house. So that's how we take off some of the profits right off the bat. So like on this particular property, I think we bought it for like 180 something, and we sold it for maybe like, let's just say 250. I don't know the exact number. So that's $25,000 up in your pocket day one, right in your pocket, with that buyer. And then that buyer is now going to be paying a monthly rent payment. That monthly rent payment comes to you. Typically there's a spread. So that's our cash flow on the property. And so I'm going to take that cash flow, and then I'm going to pay the original loan on the property. And we'll take the delta of the difference. And then over the course of that buyer's lease, they're going to be paying the payments to us, and we're going to be paying down our loan. And also, we've sold this property at a higher price or a premium above the market because the buyer needs time to qualify for the loan. So they're willing and able to go ahead and pay that higher price. So when that property eventually cashes out, which what I mean is that buyer is now going to be going through a traditional mortgage lending process, because we have now brought up maybe their credit score, or we have now helped a self-employed business person show or be seasoned for 24 months or 36 months, however long it takes, or help them acquire enough of a down payment where now they can go qualify for loan. I'm sure you're seeing this a lot right now, Nick, and that's buyers that could qualify for loans 6-12 months ago can no longer qualify for them because they could at 3%, but they can't at 7%. Yeah. So now they just need more down payment to, fix that debt to income ratio. So that's a perfect buyer. So now we work with that buyer, and now we connect them with the lender at the end, and the lender works with them in order to go get their own loan. That now loan, or that buyer, is going to use that loan to pay us off, and we're going to pay off the original debt on the property.
Enjoying this episode? Subscribe to our channel and leave us a comment down below to let us know what you want to learn next. Make sure you're following our Instagram and TikTok to stay up to date on our new episodes every Friday.
So that's how we get paid 3 times on that deal. And that's how we get them to the finish line.
So you have set deposit structures that they would have to provide you on the rental and program. So
Yep.
let's say within, I don't know, 24 months, they have to come with a certain down payment or downstroke. You guys to be still
day
committed
one.
to that deal from day one. That's
day
all
one.
structured.
Oh yeah, day one. So we'll work them through this is the difference between, say, us and, you know, what most people know of rent to own, right? And when people hear rent to own, especially in the past, people would be like, well, it's very likely that maybe 10% of people will actually go qualify for that loan. It doesn't have a high success rate.
Correct.
And that's because most people are doing it wrong. And that is, we've done it wrong plenty of times too, but we've now perfected it to a point where now we have 80 to 90% of our buyers actually qualify for loans. And the reason why we do that is because we structure everything up front and have third-party vendors or third-party specialists weigh in on the decision at the beginning. So we'll have them go through credit repair, credit enhancement at the beginning, meaning we get them enrolled in a program. We have a third party that used to write loans give us a mortgage readiness plan or a mortgage readiness date from the beginning, meaning here's the price of the house, here's where they're currently at, here's how much down payment they have. And then if they do X, Y, and Z, then they'll be able to qualify for a loan in 24 months. So now we create a custom plan in agreement with that particular buyer. And then we just hold their feet to the fire throughout that process. So that way, eventually they go qualify for that loan. Now, one of the biggest things that we see when it comes to a qualification process is how much money do they have down? Because we all know if they come in with the smallest amount down, the most likely they're going to default, because it's amazing. I have seen people come in with, 3-5% down on a house, which could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and they'll walk away because time, if somebody's been in the house for 24 months, they forget. It's the craziest thing. But
yeah, but it's even hard today, especially with the cost of goods and inflation costs, and I'm sure you're finding the same issues there. Gas prices, food products, restaurants, everybody's now overcharging. Things are so expensive. That and when you get 60% of your income is actually going towards your rental payments, that extra 40% that you got remaining left over goes. There's nothing left over to save for that initial next downstroke that you have already calculated for them to come down. So a part of that problem I can see, and I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate here, is are you going to find in that sort of sector a lot of people defaulting and not being able to meet those deadlines of those deposit structures that you guys require?
Yeah, great question. So what we've actually found is the opposite. We have found that if we can get a good down payment up front and then we have structured payments over time that correlate, this isn't something that we just make up, that correlate with the buyer's plan. And the reason why I say that is because most people know if they're going to have, like, say if you're self-employed, most people know when their peak seasons are and when their slow seasons are. So of course, we're going to structure our down payments around their peak seasons where they know they're going to have more money coming in order to put themselves in a better position. Or if you're somebody that's a commission-based salesperson, you understand when your big payments are going to come and when you get bonuses over time as well. Like we had a staff sergeant for state police officer, and he knew when he was going to be receiving his bonuses. So what we would do is we would structure the bonuses around that or the payments around that in order to put themselves in the best position. And see, here's where the big thing comes in. And this is because that down payment is all credited towards their purchase price. Correct. So everything they invest is us helping them get to a point where they're going to need less bank money or less of a loan, which means that they're more likely to qualify for that loan as well. So at the end of the day, it's all just trying to set up these buyers for success. And if somebody does come across some hardships, our plan, and the reason why we have such a high success rate, is our plan is not to get rid of them and place another person in the property. The plan is to try to restructure that deal in order to still help them get to the finish line.
Makes sense. Can I ask you how you're determining value? When is value determined? Yeah. Is value determined at the beginning of signing the contract, or is it during the time when they want to take full ownership of that property?
No, everything is established at the beginning, and here's why that's important. So it's important for us as the buyer It doesn't matter if we're buying it sub 2, owner financing, or a lease option. To establish it day one, we have to know how to close on it. And then it's important for the rent to own buyer as well, because we can't create a strategic plan with them if there's a vague number out in the future. There's no way we can do that. So what we do is based on our calculations in that particular market, we'll raise it up. I would say, a rule of thumb would be like a 10% premium on the house, based upon all the other current values of the houses that sold. And that way, we now have an end goal for someone to aim at. And then and what we've actually seen, especially during COVID, I mean, we saw some buyers walk into some pretty major amount of equity that we could have never foreseen how much that house is actually be worth. So in the end, it's actually
sometimes
really valid.
by the time they have to close on that mortgage, that value of that house is even valued higher than what they're initially paying for.
Yep, 100%.
Is there a set percentage of value that you'll determine based on your scaling platform, where you want to make sure that that property has to give you a certain amount of return?
Yeah, it's a great question, because a lot of people that enter into our coaching program are always like, so how do I know it's a good buy? Like, what's my rate of return on my investment? And I always look at it as a holistic approach. So when we look at things as we get paid 3 times on every single deal, there are some deals that are going to produce really high non-refundable deposits. Like, for example, we bought a property up in New Hampshire. It was a brand new build on the house. Couldn't sell traditionally, or they were having trouble selling it traditionally because the backyard abutted a trailer park. Brand new construction, but abutted a trailer park. So brand new construction, we bring it to our rent to own program, was requiring anywhere from 10 to 20% down. We actually received $93,000 on a 625 house up front. So that deal ended up being like a $100,000 deal. But then there's some deals, but didn't have a ton of cash flow because there was a new loan on the property because the seller just created that new loan. Versus there's some deals we did in Chicago, Illinois. We had a property, $300,000 house, didn't require a big down payment, but the spread was $700 a month. So when we look at deals, we just look at them from a holistic standpoint and say, all right, is this a good deal to go into our portfolio? Because there's some deals that are going to be quote unquote easy, meaning easy problem to solve for us with the seller, great opportunity for a buyer, and we never have to worry about that buyer ever again. And then there's going to be some deals that, are $200,000, $300,000 deals that we work tirelessly for. So my opinion, just to kind of wrap things up, is, hey, I would rather do 20 or 30 deals I don't have to worry about versus that, couple home runs. So that's how I really judge our portfolio.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody hasn't come with their initial set down stroke or deposits and then what happens if they don't?
Yeah, great question. So there's 2 pieces to every rent to own buyer's agreement. There's basically the net lease, or what we consider a long form lease agreement, which basically states, here's all the expense, here's your rent, and here's everything you got to take care of. So look at it as like a net lease, because we're not treated as landlords. They're treated as the homeowner. They're the ones that are responsible for handling everything because they're the ones going to be eventually buying that property. So any improvement they make is on them. Anything that they any challenges they face is also on them. The second piece is their purchase rider. So this is what states as their option to buy the house. The reason why these 2 pieces are important is because if we structure a non-refundable deposit, and let's say they pay one down and then they have one in 12 months, if they miss that non-refundable deposit, in our space, we have basically a 10-day to cure. Now, it could be different in different countries, and it also could be different in different states and counties. But to just use this as like the model. So they would have a certain amount of time to cure or come up with that deposit or to restructure it, right, with us. Because if they don't, then they lose their option to buy the house, and now they're just tenants.
Got it.
But if they miss a rental payment, and then now it has to go to basic tenant law. So now you're going with whatever your current state, county is for eviction, because eventually that default would then result in an eviction in the property, which also they would lose their option to purchase the property.
Got it. This is really good. I'm really liking where we're going with this, because I think with the new economy, based on the new rates that the Bank of Canada is now offering, and we're seeing a lot of our rental market right now is really shot up and skyrocketed.
Sure.
Where smaller townhouses are renting between $30,000 $3,500 a month. When you get into detaches, we're hitting, you know, anywhere between 4,500 and 6,000 a month. So the rental
Wild.
aspect is getting expensive. When we're dealing with issues right now with the landlord and tenant board, you know, to do an eviction on it for a delinquent tenant who's not paying their rent, sometimes can take you 6 to 7 months before you evict that tenant out and run through that process. Investors are now looking to relinquish their investment properties because, you know, they're not in the green anymore in monthly income, where they're in negative cash flow. And so the unaffordability is there, where it's costing money out of pocket. It's becoming very expensive for investors to maintain those properties. Where I'm going with this is, how do we retain to get investors to continue to be confident in purchasing within the real estate market? And this is one really good creative program that you guys are offering, that just takes a little bit of understanding to it. But this is what your coaching program does. You take people by the hand and actually run them through the entire process of how to find the properties. And as well, do you deal with contracts as well? Are all the contracts set up in your coaching program?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The way in which we operate our coaching program, then I have an idea of what you were saying, or to compile on that. What we've realized, and we've been through many coaching programs, and still to this day invest tens of thousands of dollars every single year, because we're true believers in go find the right people or person that's either done it or is still doing it and is very, you know, far ahead of us, so that way we can shortcut, you know, our success, and whether it's scaling a business or real estate deals, you name it.
We call it R&D, rip off and duplicate.
Yeah. So then, So then so then when you look at it that way, what we've discovered though is there really has to be multiple layers of support in order to put somebody in a successful position to actually make the change. Our mission is to help transform, or be known as the community that transforms dedicated people into wicked smart real estate investors. And the importance of the transformation is where like the hand-holding and support comes in. Because if somebody really is interested in making a giant change or transforming, maybe going from W-2 employee to real estate investor, that's a big transformation they need to make. So having layers of support. So we have, you know, our coaches, we have our community, and then we have, you know, interwoven support teams set up for that as well, because we really need to immerse somebody in an environment where they can now be successful. Because how often does it happen where it's like somebody's like, I want to leave my W-2 job, I'm going to be a real estate investor. They go talk to their friends and they're like, what are you talking about? You should stay at that job. You have a really good job. You live in a really nice place. Right. And now it's about helping them transform. So by giving them consistent layers of support. So I say that because the real estate itself is the easy part. Like, we could show you where to find deals, how to structure deals, how to negotiate deals, how to utilize your contracts, how to sell the properties. But it's all the other things that come into play that really are the difference between someone who's successful and not successful in this real estate space. So I know I went up on a bit of a tangent there, but that's where the transformation comes. But I wanted to hit on that one point that you made. So you have these landlords out there right now, right? And they're now in the red. What's interesting is we come across real estate deals all the time where the monthly payment is high, and that person, whether it's the homeowner or a landlord, now is in a position where they might not be getting what the monthly cash flow that they hope for. So we just structured a recent deal right outside of Denver, Colorado. Now, this was a property, very similar deal to what I did before. It was a subject to deal. Lady needed to get out of the property. Nice home though. And I think it's in Parker, Colorado. But the monthly payment, because the taxes are higher in that area, real estate tax actually jacks up the monthly payment on the property, which the traditional landlord wouldn't be able to cash flow it. So what we did on this most recent deal is we sold it rent to own, and we knew that there wasn't going to be any cash flow. So instead, what we did was we actually worked with the buyer to come up with more down payment that was going to be counted towards their monthly payment. So that way we were whole and then they were whole. So it really worked out, put us in a really good position where Now we actually received all the money up front, even though we were going to be subsidizing a part of his monthly payment. We already had the cash flow in our bank. Now that's just one example, but you can consistently look at these deals and how they're structured and say, all right, well, if this monthly payment's really high and I might be negative, let's go see if I can get a really big down payment that I feel good. And I'm like, okay, if I can get $60,000 and I know I'm going to have to subsidize $500 a month, which is 12 grand a year, I know I want to structure something in, say, 24 months. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to net like 40,000, and the other, 20 some thousand will just be cost of doing business. And I just received it up front so I could subsidize that. So, but it ends up becoming a powerful deal because you get money up front, you got a buyer in the house, you're not worrying about maintaining the property. And then, of course, that buyer is paying for you to pay down the loan, which means you're building an equity. And then eventually that buyer will then cash you out. So
or you built in some extra cash flow down that you can go and get it and continue building up your real estate portfolio. And all you're doing is getting a return back on your initial investment that you're making on that property.
Yeah, so you can pull it off the table too, right? You can pull some of your equity off the table day one. And I'll tell you one other cool technique, which is if you already have a loan on the property, that you can eventually go sell that property on owner financing or a vendor take back, because what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll create a new mortgage that will pay the original loan on the property. And because that buyer doesn't have to go qualify with a bank, we can now raise the interest rates even higher, which will then eventually cover that original loan. Because say you get a 6% interest rate on here, but that we had to go qualify for a loan on the original loan. But they don't have to now, that buyer, and you could put it at 8-9% because they don't have to deal with all the fees and all the hoops you have to jump through. Well, now you make it a 2% delta month over month on that as well.
So this program, your coaching strategies here is also good, from my understanding, for people that actually own a real estate portfolio. That exists. You can, like, I got clients that have up to 15 to 20 property doors that they rent out, where they can now go back if they want to start taking in some cash from the table from their investments that they built up on all this equity, but they're still in the red, where they can come out and maybe offer their current tenants a rent-to-own program as well. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, I was actually in this guy wasn't a student. He was an acquaintance of mine, and he had a rental portfolio of almost like 700 properties, most of them single families all throughout the Midwest. And when I met him, he said, now based on the ideas that we talked about, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go lower my overhead on all of the maintenance on all of my properties, and I'm going to go sell off a portion of my portfolio every single year on rent to own. So now I don't have to worry about maintaining all those properties, because a lot of the maintenance or the overhead comes from being a landlord is maintaining these properties. But instead, he was going to put the maintenance onto the tenants now, or the tenant buyers, through a rent-to-own program.
Correct, yeah.
So then he was exactly what you're saying, which is, hey, I'm going to go pull some equity off the table. I'm going to maintain ownership, though, so I still get all the tax benefits of owning the property. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pushing the maintenance over to them as well, so I can start increasing my cash flow on my portfolio.
This is awesome. This is some really good insight, Zachary, and it was a pleasure to even have you on the show. If somebody wanted to get involved into your coaching program and want to learn a little bit more about this, how can they reach out to you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'd love to give everyone that ends up listening to this podcast our first Amazon best-selling book. We'll actually ship it to you for absolutely free. You'll get the PDFs and things as well, but we'll make sure you get a hard copy. All you have to do is just go to wickedsmartbooks.com/Nick, and then the number 2. That's wickedsmartbooks.com/Nick, Nick2. And go ahead and dive into that. Jump into the book. It's actually going to outline every single thing we talked about. Obviously, we're trying to condense our real estate subject into 30, 45 minutes. Diving in there, that'll also put you in communication with our team, and certainly we can help you through the process based on whatever your goals are with real estate investing. Again, whether it's down here in the States or it's up in Canada, we can show you how to do it up there or down here, whatever is going to be part of your real estate portfolio.
Yeah, you got my creative juices flowing for sure, and definitely going to be thinking about this a little further on. I'd love to get a copy of that book so I can read it and kind of dive into that. Definitely, my curiosity has peaked at this point in time, because it's offering these creative methods as well to our clients, to our investors, to hopefully help them and educate them on building their real estate portfolio. And if this is just another method or another add-on that we can create to service our clients, and including ourselves, we're always looking at those opportunities. Is there anything else that maybe you want to put some light on in regards to either other creative financing options or other things that you offer in your coaching program that people should be aware of?
Well, Nick, I would say, just to add on to what you were talking about, I have never seen so many realtor referrals or wholesale referrals in our business since in the last 6+ months. It's been insane, and that's just because the traditional market is, as you're saying right now, there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of transition, there's a lot of need for creative financing. Because the way I always put it is, like, creative financing is the water in the your glass with all the ice cubes. It's not different from everything else. It's really what holds everything together. It's like, if it doesn't fit inside the traditional wholesale box, or the traditional retail box, or the fix and flip box, or even the buy and hold box, or the Burmet, like, if it doesn't fit in that traditional sense, then you can add on to it with a creative technique that could even improve upon, and sometimes even improve upon, the original technique that you were using. So that's why I would always encourage people just to understand the different dynamics of that, because the conversations that you have become way different. And if you're, say, a realtor right now, and you're trying to figure out how to get your head inside or get on the side of ownership, well, this is a smooth way to be able to do so, because you're already you're already doing the hard part. The hard part is prospecting, and you're already doing it. You're already communicating with people. Now, imagine if you could just solve one additional person's problem, because that's all creative financing is just solving problems. If you could solve one additional person's problem by just asking them some additional questions, and oh, by the way, they might be even more satisfied too, because they might not know, and very likely they don't, that there are other ways in order to sell or buy a house out there. And now you're able to provide more and more techniques and more solutions. So then it just adds more value, become a one-stop shop, especially if you're already in the game.
Yeah, this is awesome. All right, so listen, Zach, I think this will kind of conclude our episode today. We definitely want to have you back on the show to get some more insight on this program that you are offering. I'm definitely interested. If you can maybe send me a copy of your book, I'll take a glimpse into it.
Of course.
We're going to be excited to air this episode out there within the market, because it is a very asked question quite often in our industry: is, do you offer a rent-to-own program? It doesn't really go with normal conventional mortgage financing on it, but it's something that I really like and want to kind of build on as well. So just really excited to have you on the show. We appreciate you coming on, and look forward to further conversations on this.
Nick, I appreciate you having me on. Super grateful as always, and hopefully your audience gets some good value out of this, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Sounds good, man. Thanks a lot, and I appreciate your time.
Of course.
Take care.
Looking to buy or sell? Call a team you can trust. Don't believe me? Our Google reviews say it all. Put us on your lawn, your house will be gone. theopteam.com.